Welcome to Brand Innovators Behind the Brand. In this series, we'll be visiting marketing leaders across the country at their brand headquarters for an exclusive interview. Today we're in Chicago at Kellogg's headquarters, where we'll get an exclusive interview with Charisse Hughes, SVP Global Brand and Advanced Analytics Officer. Our interview today will be conducted by Kathy Lydon, Senior Director, Client Development at the Trade Desk. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, my name is Kathy Lydon, and I work at the Trade Desk, and I'm here with Charisse Hughes from Kellogg. Really excited to be here, and thank you for the time, Charisse.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and in my hometown, which
Yes,
is so nice.
I know.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah, it's
in
nice
the right time of year
to navigate
in the
into Chicago. Yeah, when it's beautiful and sunny and warm.
Right. You planned that well.
Yeah, thrilled to be here. The Kellogg Company is really focused and investing behind our advanced analytics journey. I actually lead brands and advanced analytics as well as the marketing excellence function within the company. I joined the company during the pandemic, so it's been a unique experience getting to know all the key players remotely. But I think we've all had to navigate those waters and done so successfully. So,
and it's interesting because, looking at your career, you spent the majority of it in beauty, in marketing.
Yeah.
As you said, you came over to Kellogg's as a CMO. So could you tell us a little bit about how that role has evolved to what you're doing now?
Sure. I mean, if I think about what happened in 2020, obviously we know the world was sort of turned upside down by COVID, but also the murder of George Floyd. I had a really monumental birthday or a milestone birthday, however you want to term it. And that sort of created this existential crisis for me as it relates to the contribution that I was making to society, to my community. And I also felt like I had done all of the work that I needed to do at Pandora, where I led the data and analytics transformation and helped to expand that business into Latin America. So I was kind of check the box on all of the skill sets that I had garnered over the course of my career, and felt like this was a moment in time for me to really embrace and lean into purpose. And Kellogg is a 116-year-old company this year.
Wow.
And it really has made a very strong commitment to purpose throughout that legacy. And then leaned into ED&I and making sure that there's a seat at the table for everyone. And that really touched me and connected with me on a deeper level. I said, you know what, this is the company. And if you look at the portfolio of brands, the iconic characters, and the nostalgia that goes with working with a company that's been around during your childhood, it all sort of, the boxes
ties
were
together.
They were all ticked. So here I am.
Right. And from CMO, as you started, to now
That's
Chief
right.
Data, and how,
That's right.
Those are really becoming one, or data is integral now too.
It was critical for us as a company to reiterate that analytics was very important. And so we wanted to signal that to the organization as well as to the broader landscape, that we were really investing and that we were driving this transformation. And so I'm thankful that the organization has made this commitment, and I'm excited to be leading the charge.
And when you speak of those shifts, I'm sure that trend is just going to continue, especially in marketing. And as far as the shift in the purpose for good, consumers now are expecting that from brands, and it's more important than it ever has been. So can you tell us how Kellogg is addressing it and how it's moving the business forward?
Yeah. I mean, so with the disruption and the societal disharmony that we've encountered in the U.S. in particular, we actually invested in an inclusive marketing program, which was all about education and educating our marketers on how to connect with a diverse consumer. And so we did some work. That population of Black, Asian, and Hispanic or Latinx consumers, that population, that cohort, has $2 trillion of spending power. And
growing.
We need to serve, we need to represent and understand the communities that we serve and have empathy for their needs. Our goal and why we exist is to provide affordable and accessible foods. So we needed to connect with them more intimately. And so we educated all of our marketers and our commercial leaders on how and what channels that consumer is shopping in, understanding their affinities, their habits, attitudes, and it's really moved the needle for us in terms of engagement. And then one other piece that we did was to size the opportunity in terms of looking at each one of our brands and identifying, who are we speaking to, and who should we be speaking to in light of that, the size of those consumer cohorts and how they're shopping. And so we have really been purposeful and intentional about sizing the opportunity, about measuring on a consistent and ongoing basis how we're doing in terms of engaging and driving household penetration with those different consumer cohorts.
It's great. And I think, and you being an example of it, it also is a great way in this tight job market for recruitment, because
1,000%.
Consumers and employees are both looking for that purpose and inclusiveness.
That's right. And in fact, one of the things that we did, we partnered with Navalins because we wanted to provide the service to the visually impaired. And so we have an app that consumers can scan on our package. That actually provides so many opportunities when you think about, yes, we're serving the visually impaired because they can actually hear the packaging details and understand without having to read. But also it allows us the opportunity to connect more deeply with that consumer over the course of time. So we're thinking about how we leverage that beyond its original intent and using it to communicate and as a channel, as a marketing channel and a media channel for connecting with the consumer more fully.
And something that might not have been as top of mind.
It may not have been top of mind. But I mean, if you think about packaging is another form of media. So
that's great.
It's a great opportunity for us.
So consumer behavior shifts.
Yes.
We've seen, the digital acceleration through the pandemic.
Yeah.
What other behavior shifts have you seen, and how is Kellogg's approaching or addressing them?
Yeah, I mean, there's this massive shift in terms of wellness, whether it be mental health, and there's a holistic wellness now that is so key. We have seen snacking become even more important, and consumers, especially Gen Zers, are accelerating their snacking behavior, almost trading out one regular meal occasion to just focus on snacking because, they're at home. And the kind of day blends all together. So you just kind of squeeze in between meetings, you run downstairs and grab a snack.
Definitely. I don't know how you can work from home and not snack. And I'm not a plug, but I have a box of Cheez-Its in my pantry at all times.
Good idea.
Yeah,
it's
an easy snack that
ready to go whenever you're ready.
So I can see how that's a really interesting trend coming out of.
So we're seeing the acceleration of snacking, and I'm sure you've seen it as well and experienced it firsthand.
Yep. And kind of with how fast these behaviors are changing, and you're alluding to future shifts, how is Kellogg's able to prepare for these future shifts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing a few different things. One, we just launched a marketing leadership forum, which brings together 140 leaders from around the globe, and we do that to really think about thought leadership. So we want to make sure that we are where consumers are. So that means we just launched a metaverse incubator. It's a competition within our company from around the globe to participate in the metaverse and think about how do you amplify, a commercial activation into the metaverse. So we're playing around with that and experimenting there. So we're also really focused on how we build a cultural relevance. We talked about the K-way of inclusive marketing. And one of the offshoots of that was our Chef in Residence program. And so we have, we actually have our third chef who just started, who comes from the islands. And she is an amazing chef who's interested in R&D. And the impetus here was how can we bring culturally relevant foods and create opportunities for R&D employment and in R&D roles in the future. And so we're really thinking about and leveraging that program to be more culturally relevant with our foods, as well as how we appeal to those diverse consumer cohorts.
And preparing for the future.
Preparing for the future, 1,000%.
So let me ask you, as you get closer to consumers, how are they impacting your technology investments, your digital bets?
We are focused on you putting data at the heart of everything, but data not for data's sake, data because we want to connect and understand our consumers better. I think one of the challenges of being a wholesaler, if you will, or a B2B player, is that you aren't necessarily tapped in as closely to understanding consumers, consumer behavior, how they shop, what they're spending on, what else is in their basket. And so the impetus for us on this data journey is all about connecting more deeply with the consumer and going beyond those customer relationships. So one of the things that we did over the last couple years is we created a forum. And in fact, it's a data and analytics summit. And we brought together leaders from around the globe, 50 plus leaders across functions, across regions. And the objective here was to start this conversation on how do we put data at the heart of our company and how do we use it to solve business problems. And so what we did was we created a business-backed strategy. Like, where are the areas that we need to connect more deeply? And what we learned is that marketing is at the heart of that, right? Because of the digital transformation, because of e-commerce. So we started in the marketing domain, and we've developed quite a few different pilots based upon sizing and prioritizing where the opportunity exists. So one of the things that we're doing is really understanding better how our different media channels are driving that consumer's behavior and driving propensity to shop, driving propensity to get to the next phase of the funnel. And using that to help our marketers create priorities and build
future campaigns,
marketing campaigns that are relevant and that are resonant with their consumer target. So
you mentioned getting closer to your consumers.
Absolutely.
How have you identified and built these experiences that they're craving? And can you share a few examples?
One of the things that we've done, I'm really incredibly proud of, which kind of fuses cultural relevance but also insight, is we developed this campaign called Aquí y Allá, which is now and then in Spanish. And what we're trying to do is really appeal to that Latinx consumer and Latinx moms that may have, it's a multi-generational campaign, right? So if you're a mom that grew up on Kellogg's, now you're introducing it to your family. Our approach was not just about targeting Latinx consumers. We also wanted to be holistic in our development of this content and this commercial. And so we went to Mexico City to film it. We had a Latinx crew on set. And so we really immersed ourselves in the culture to bring this campaign to life. I'm incredibly proud of the work that the team has done.
Yep, and a growing market, as you said.
Absolutely,
So that's great.
Absolutely. And then you probably already know, as we think about Pringles and the role that Pringles plays, Mr. P is the mascot for Pringles. But every November, we have been participating with Movember.
Yep.
And Movember is all about introducing the conversation around mental health and men's mental health specifically, because we know that the suicide rate among young men is actually much higher than it should be. And so we've engaged Mr. P and Pringles into the conversation because we want to. We are a purpose-driven company and brand, and it's important for us to put that at the heart of our discussion and making sure that we're influencing in a positive way.
Yep. And what an iconic character.
It's an iconic character.
Iconic character
Absolutely.
To lead that charge.
Absolutely.
So shifting gears a bit, how do you approach digital from a channel perspective?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's all about being where the consumer is. So, I mean, many CPGs spend more energy and investment behind sort of linear TV. We've started to evolve that. As we know, consumers are streaming and we need to be playing in CTV. So we're probably in the 50-50 mix, linear and CTV and video and YouTube. And then, the other 50% in those digital channels, because we need to be where the consumer is. And that engagement is evolving. It's not just about, eyeballs. It's about eyeballs and engagement and conversion.
Yep.
And that's part of where our data and analytics and modern marketing transformation is taking us, is to really understand better how we engage those consumers. So.
Yeah, and that shift in dynamic really has helped to make data at the forefront, or you're able to use data so much better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm sure that shift will continue.
Yes.
And then speaking of channels, how do you approach, in a different way, how do you approach or think about direct-to-consumer versus your traditional wholesale partnerships versus emerging players?
Yeah. It's interesting because, obviously we've been a wholesaler, and that's where our consumer, the majority of consumers still shop in wholesale channels. But we know that the growth is coming from D2C channels at a higher rate, right? And so for us, we have to be playing in that channel. So we're in the early stages of experimentation so that we can, connect and gain share. The ability to gain share will be driven by spending the right amount of dollars, but also having the right balance between online and offline channels. And it also allows us to be much more personalized in the messages and the way, and aligning to how the consumer shops. We've been using it from an experimentation and a learning standpoint. We actually launched a platform called Antenna, which is a really cool AI platform that allows us to garner insights from consumers. So they land on this site and they're greeted by Tony the Tiger as a
surprise.
Yeah, exactly, as a bot. And we're actually being very purposeful about how we're soliciting and asking consumers to join the conversation and help us gain those insights. We're very focused on segmentation so that we are not kind of leaning towards this bias of having one consumer cohort. And that is helping us to speak to all types of consumers and all consumer cohorts in a way that's balanced.
That's great. And through the lens of experimentation, it sounds like you're able to engage consumers in a totally different way with direct to consumer.
Totally different way at different times, right? And so how you go to market on the digital shelf is very different from, the display that you put up in store, and understanding how consumers engage with both is really key. We've partnered with delivery services in different ways to stay top of mind and really drive that mental availability and connect with them as they're ready to convert.
Transformation.
It's transformational, but it's also just, there's so much data at our fingertips. The question becomes how do you manage that in a way and how can you be coordinated in your experimentation and your test and learns to really garner the insights that are going to help you move the needle.
So Charisse, equipping oneself to do business in the digital world can mean different things. It can mean adopting different consumer-facing digital offerings, mobile apps, digital marketing, or even internally, your operations and procedures. So how is Kellogg equipping itself to do business in the digital world?
Yeah, I talked a little bit about the data summits that we did, which was at the forefront of, or the first step, if you will, in defining where we wanted to go with data. And as a part of that, instead of sort of boiling the ocean and saying we're going to go after all of the different domains, whether it be RGM or modern marketing optimization, we said we're going to focus on the two areas where we know we have the biggest opportunity from a size of prize standpoint. And so we focused on modern marketing and marketing optimization, as well as revenue growth management. And so we've really laser focused on those two domains, and then from there identified the use cases, the business issues that we want to tackle and that we want to go after. So essentially we're taking these rapid pilots, and from rapid pilot to scaling is the approach that we're taking. So get all the data into a sandbox, experiment with the data, identify where there are relationships between the data and the action that we want to drive. So for instance, if we want, to test YouTube and see how YouTube is driving the consumer from the top of the funnel all the way down through to conversion, put the data in a sandbox and make sure that we're using the right metrics. If you think about marketing, there are 200 or more metrics that we could be evaluating. Right?
Yeah.
So how do you figure out which one is really important, or the metric that's
going to move your business?
And that's going to move the business forward. And so we're testing in this sandbox environment, we validate, and then we move into scaling. And that has been
really interesting,
really successful for us so far.
I've heard a lot from consumer packaged goods. The data is a key pain point, which clearly it doesn't seem to be for Kellogg, but
not true.
In the past, retailers
exactly.
have held most of the data. And so can you tell us a little bit about how you are gathering relevant and useful insights from your consumers?
It's a great question. And actually, Kellogg is one of the first companies to have like a family rewards or a loyalty program over 10 years ago. And we have 33 million households within our Kellogg family rewards program. But we've been really focused on making sure that we're acquiring new customers and that we keep that data fresh and relevant. So one of the fun things that we did was at daylight savings time, our Eggo Waffles brand wanted to inspire by giving away 100,000 boxes of Eggo Waffles. And it goes to show that the value exchange is there. So we knew that if we gave away 100,000, we could actually ask the consumer to give us their information. And that's exactly what happened. And we gave away 100,000 in 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Which was a record. And so consumers are willing to share their information if they think, number one, you're giving them something for it.
Right.
And if later on you are going to drive that level of personalization that we know they are craving and expecting from brands.
Right.
And so it's got to be kind of
a value
a really nice
and
value
we've done
exchange.
As marketers a poor job at
That's right. And communicating the value.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So that's a great way.
Yeah, it's a great
for you. And I know daylight savings times can be also a really stressful time for people.
It's a stressful time.
So what a great way to surprise and delight them and get Eggo Waffles.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you get all this great data points, and Kellogg is a big company, obviously, global company. What do you do to make sure that you're sharing all this great data between the different teams? And what are some best practices that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of best practices, and for us, it's really about making sure that we understand and we're creating a single source of truth for within the company. We talked a little bit earlier about how we're using visualization to solve problems as well. And our sales team has created a perfect store dashboard that allows them to measure on-shelf availability. And we know if it's not available, then you can't buy it. But they mobilized all of the internal teams around this one metric. And so now we're all focused on measuring on-shelf availability and making sure across the U.S. and there are different tools that are being leveraged in other geographies that, we are clear on where the product is. And then, it links back to other functional areas within the organization. I don't need to have marketing in a place where the product isn't available, right? So
it can go the other way for you.
And it starts to go the other way. That's right. And so you eliminate waste in the system, and it really helps to mobilize the organization towards business outcomes. And that has been a huge step in the right direction for us. So that's number one. Number two is just all about making sure that we are having the conversation about what are the right metrics. You can easily get lost in the data. I mean, all the data, there's so much data, number one, but it's unstructured, it's not clear. You can easily, start to build these visualization tools that have nothing to do with the problem or the issue that you're trying to solve. So being really intentional and purposeful and using that sandbox to drive that correlation is also really key. Being responsible and staying true to your values. For us, it's all about being ethical and the ethical treatment of our consumers' data, and making sure that we do that within the confines, and we educate our teams about what it means to collect, protect, activate, and communicate around data in a way that aligns to our values is key as well.
Yep. And you say, collect and communicate the value. How how do you measure the success? So, for example, you have all this great data points. How do you make sure that they're turned into actionable insights that actually drive business benefit?
Yeah, I mean, that just goes back to the sandbox, right? So for instance, we've learned that there's a really strong correlation between video view through completion and conversion to sales. So it's not about clicks, it's not about shares. It's about view
actually
through.
interacting.
If they complete the video, then we have seen that there's a correlation. So it's really figuring out what's the right metric. And then measuring that versus kind of getting lost in the data, which is so easy for companies and brands to do.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Well, this has all been very enlightening, and really appreciate your time, Charisse. I have 2 questions to kind of wrap it up, and I think the audience would also like to hear what is next on the innovation agenda for Kellogg, and what do you think are the most important factors driving not only Kellogg, but the consumer packaged goods category overall?
Sure. So what's next is we'll continue to advance our agenda in data and analytics. We talked about the 2 domains that we're starting with. Innovation is the next one at the forefront. Also thinking about where are there future pockets of growth that we can actually go after, and leveraging our data to really get closer to those next, whether it be category expansion or partnerships that we could engage in that would be relevant for our consumer. That's a huge opportunity that we're thinking about. We'll continue to leverage those insights that we have from our antenna tool. So testing concepts, testing new ingredient stories and new claims messaging. And
that's all in real time.
And this is all in real time at the kind of flip of a switch almost.
That's great.
And so we'll continue to do that. And we're building up an understanding of different consumer cohorts, different messages, different concepts that we can really leverage to build out and expand our portfolio in ways that are relevant.
Well, it's going to be exciting to see what comes.
It is exciting.
Yeah, and really do appreciate you sharing all this. It's been great. It's interesting to hear how Kellogg's is really leaning into innovation, but also the corporate citizenship that you talked about, because that really is driving that closer connection to consumers, and I'm driving your business forward. So excited, like I said, to see what is to come with Kellogg.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
Yes, you too.